Okay, welcome to Satsang.
Welcome.
Today the subject is so simple that it's extremely powerful. And I'd like to start out by asking you a question and feel it out before we can go on with the topic. What would you say is the most important and noblest act that we as human beings can do in everyday life? The most important of all, the most sacred and noblest of all. I've had so many letters that people ask that some people really don't know, so I like to get attention first as we go into it.
Well, it's love, to give love.
Okay. Yes, to give love, but how do we start giving love?
Realizing awareness, realizing life.
The way you talked about it last satsang was, that was beautiful. This is it, okay. The answer is very simple. It is to experience your humanity in everyday life. You know, some scientists have said, some people have said when Source created the human being, he wanted to experience itself in humanity. You are a human being. You're very much aware of the human, but you don't realize that all your drives in the human part are driven by being. The need for love, for happiness, for peace, for joy, for fulfillment, all comes from being. But we cannot experience them in our humanity as long as we think that things are wrong, as long as we think we are victims, as long as we think we are not good enough, as long as we don't love ourselves. So how do we experience? You see, when we think of experiencing, because when people say, well, I've had so much fear this week, you know, but I experienced it, Burt. Okay, and then as they kept on talking, I realized I didn't experience it at all. They'd indulged in it. So there is a vast difference between indulgence and experience. And as a matter of fact, they're opposites. Because indulgence comes from our ego, human weakness. We indulge. I'm a victim. Why is this happening to me? What is wrong? I've lost her from Oregon. But anyway, it's okay. And so what is happening all the time is that we are not conscious of the fact that our driving force all the time is towards being, but we're not aware of the being that is so important in our life. You see, because we think of ourselves as separate individuals. And it is that which creates all the suffering in the world. All of it. Okay. Let's discuss the difference between direct experience and indulgence. Okay? Indulgence is when you say, I'm so afraid. How do I get rid of it? Letters, I get letters all the time. How do I get rid of my fear? How do I get rid of this negativity? How do I... Don't ever try to get rid of any emotional pain, because it's a lesson you need to learn. Nothing happens by chance. It is there because somehow you have created it through some faulty thinking, through some memory, through some need which isn't fulfilled, etc. Okay. I'm going to have to shut this off because it's interfering. I'm sorry, Sylvia, but...
Good night, Sylvia.
Yeah. Okay, we're not responding. Okay, so so this is the key to experience directly. Okay, when you experience directly, there is a vast change in you. You begin to go through a tremendous change. This change doesn't happen as long as you want to get rid of your pain. You see? The one thing that happens all the time, the moment we experience pain, is that you feel you're a victim of it. You see? And you are not a victim. You know, you said something so beautiful. And later on, I would like to recall exactly what you said because it was perfect. But many people did not hear it. Do you remember what you said? If you're desperate, you go right through it. Yes. Until you get to the end of it. And then you experience what being is. You see, the being part of us is the perfect part of us. Is the part that is heavy, ecstatic, is what we call the God part of us. You see, Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. So that is the very kingdom itself. But we pay so much attention to the human part, to the frailty, that we actually think we are frail. We do not realize that our strength comes from being, which is also referred to as the heart, okay? Or referred to even as the Holy Spirit, that part which is whole, which is spirit, which is complete in you. So as long as you want to get rid of something, as long as you want to control it, as long as you don't want to learn from it, you automatically begin to suffer. Because you indulge in it. And the more you indulge in pain, the more the pain becomes real to you. The more it becomes real to you, that's how diseases begin to happen. Chronic, physical, mental, emotional pain comes from that. But, you know, as I was going through this, something came to me by an article about Ramana Maharshi. And so as I meditated on it to talk about it, another thing came. It is called alchemy. You've heard of alchemy? Mm-hmm. Okay, alchemy is the way to turn lead into gold. Okay, but in this particular case, alchemy is how to turn fear into love. How to turn that which makes us suffer into its opposite, so we can use it to transcend. So this is the alchemy. First, in order to deal with anything that is happening to you, the first step, and I made a copy incidentally, so that you can take it home and use it in case you want to remember it. The first part is this, that we are always seeking the being. And studies have been made by, what's his name, a businessman who was very sick, dying, suffered heart attack at 40 and was told that he will soon die if he goes up the stairs, and he lived to be 80 years of age and became enlightened. What was his name? He founded the... what's his name? I forgot. Anyway, he came up with this system. And it says that all the time we are seeking the being three ways. We are seeking it through approval, which is love, feeling that you're okay. Mm-hmm. Okay? Seeking it through safety, you want security, and seeking it to control. You have a need to be right. You want to be empowered. See, these are all qualities that are coming from the higher self. They're coming from the true self. Okay? But because we need these, we think we don't have them. Because we think we don't have them, then they lead to all known maladies, emotional and physical. Okay? Like, for example, how many people suffer from stress? Well, according to the United States poll, studies were made that says that 95% of the population in the United States suffers stress, some form of stress. And this is quite something. But now the question is, what is stress? What is it? Yeah.
I know a good acronym for stress.
What?
Staying tense regularly, even though you see it's stupid.
You can see it that way, or we can give it another definition. Okay? Stress is self-concern. Oh, what is happening to me? You know, am I sick? Something's going to happen. Am I secure? I lack funds, or blah, 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 right away. Self-concern is what causes stress. You see, in other words, we're so focused on the human part that we forget that all the greatness, all the goodness, all the beauty, all that we are comes from our own being, which is the oneness itself, which is that one force. So, and these are the three things. And I didn't come up with them, but this enlightened man did, and it's so true. And as I worked with it in hypnotherapy, I've done hypnotherapy for 30 years. As I worked with it, I found everybody who was mentally, not deranged, but mentally sick or very, very disturbed, they all suffered from one of these three: seeking approval, safety, and control. Okay? So this is the first thing to do in order to use alchemy. To see that if you have anxiety, if you have fear, if you have worry, if you have any form at all that is keeping you unhappy, stop and see how you are seeking either one of these. Because you are seeking that part in you that you think you are not, but which you are. Number 2, the moment you find out which one it is, control, approval, or safety, or all three, and most people have all three, okay, then what you do is you take a deep breath and you put a golden light around you, or just bright light around you. And as soon as you do, ask the question, how will this make me better? And don't answer it. Don't ever answer it. Because if you answer it, okay, you begin to believe the mind. And the moment you believe the mind, there we go again into our problems again. Because we have to learn to listen to the heart, the being. Okay? So what is beautiful about this 3-step of transcendence of using alchemy is that the moment you're ready to do that question, you change it immediately. Even if you are deeply depressed, and you do the first one and find out what you are seeking, you go through the second one, you put the light around you and take a deep breath, and at that moment says, how will this make me feel better? And you say it, and you don't seek an answer. The moment you do, you begin to feel better already. I know because I've done it. I've had many Skype clients tell them to do it, and they were all surprised how all of a sudden, wow, you know, this was killing me, I thought, and all of a sudden I did these 3 steps, and it changed. It changed me. Okay. Now, what I'd like to say also is the importance of the human part of us, because you see, Course in Miracles tells us all the time that the human part of us is ego, and it's true. It is. But we need the ego to see that which we don't need. Do you understand? You know, we need darkness so that we know how beautiful light is. You know, when you enter a room and it's dark, immediately, what do? You search for the light. You put the light on and darkness as if it was never been there. Okay? But you needed that darkness to reach out for the light. Okay? So this is what the human part is for. Is itself the pivotal point, the driving force. Because when we learn to love it, accept it, and see it as the catalyst for our own growth, you see, we learn to respect it, in other words, our human part. As we do that, immediately the being comes into fruition. Let me give you an example. Ramana Maharshi, who was my mentor, he appeared to me in the 70s. And he was as real as you are sitting there, you know. And it didn't last very long. And I was a physiotherapist at the time, and I never thought about these things. I never knew who he was. And after it happened, I became a little disoriented, and I thought I was having hallucinations. But 6 months later, I found his picture on the cover of a book, and it changed my life. And from then on, I moved to a basement apartment. All I wanted to do was chant his name and sit and do nothing else for about a year, until after a while I said, well, I need to do some exercise. I did some yoga, and then I became a yoga teacher for 20 years in Toronto. I was one of the pioneers at the time, because they put me in the newspapers, CBC, Food for Thought, CFTO TV and etc. etc. Okay, so now I don't mean it that I want to talk about myself, but what I'm really saying is that the moment he appeared in my life changed. And I've been devoted to him all these years. But the thing that I want to say about him, there was something that happened, which is very important that I talk about it now. It's thing that happened that I didn't know. Okay? When he was 16, he suffered from a great fear. And the fear was so great that he was shaking all over. He was absolutely petrified of death. But instead of running to a doctor, instead of going to ask somebody else, instead of seeking help, instead of feeling like a victim, he, through grace, I guess, lied down on the floor and said, okay, I'm going to die. What choice do I have? You know, so I'm going to let it happen. Well, the moment he allowed it to happen, he entered another state of being that convinced him that death is impossible, because being cannot die. And from then on, he became a master. He went on a mountain, Arunachala, and he stayed there for the rest of his life. And people from all over the world started visiting him because his power was great. But here is something else. See, when he realized his true nature as Bhagavan, which means Christ too, really, it's another different word, okay? He retired beyond humanity. He would sit and be at peace, totally in heaven. He didn't want to talk to anybody. He didn't want to do anything. The ants started crawling on his body. They were eating away at him. The pus was coming out from the pores of his body. He didn't eat. The nails grew. His hair grew. He didn't want to bother. He never talked. He became mute. And he did that for quite a long time. The people were concerned. They took care of him. They cut his hair, you know, and cleaned him up and everything else. But he still wouldn't talk, wouldn't teach. Well, when he was 19, when he was 31, he experienced his humanity, because it is inevitable. You've got to experience your humanity no matter how great you are. You see? And this is, you know, this is why too, you know, and when Jesus reached 30 years of age and he became Christ, because he realized his true nature was Christ conscious, he gave us a very beautiful example. He carried the cross, because he said the humanity is your cross, but that doesn't mean you need to suffer. It means to carry it and then surrender to it. See, Christians say that he died for our sins. That's a misnomer. It was Paul who came up with that idea, Paul of Tarsus. But the real Jesus never told us that. He said that was an example of how to live life. And now what I'd like to do, Jerry is a very good reader. If you could read it very, very slow, what happened to Ramana Maharshi when he was 32 years of age. If you could read from here. This is an article I didn't even know, I never saw before. From here to there, okay?
Okay. In 1912, when he was 32, he went through a lesser-known second death experience, which seemed to mark his complete return to normal outward activity. He remarked several times that the current of the self he had realized at age 16 had never changed. But while this new experience may not have upstaged his previous realization, it did serve to reintegrate him with his body, vehicle, and with life. This is how he described what happened. While walking back from wherever that is, a cave one day, he was suddenly overcome with physical weakness. He laid down, and the world disappeared, as if a bright white curtain was drawn across his vision. His breathing and circulation stopped, and his body turned a livid blue. For 15 minutes he lay as if in a state of rigor mortis, although still aware of the self within. The current of awareness that was his daily experience persisted even with the shutdown of all his bodily systems. Then, suddenly, he explained, he felt a rush from the heart on the right to the left side of his chest and a re-establishment of life in the body. After this, he was more at ease in everyday circumstances and began to increase association with those seekers who gathered around him.
So even he was a Bhagavan, okay? He still had to learn to be human too, to experience the human part, and then he started teaching from there. And many of his books I've got there about him. And he started doing what he was meant to be doing. Okay, so this is so important because we miss this, okay? That our greatest gift is being born a human being. And the human part has to be fully experienced in all its emotions and all its feelings. How often we've been told that emotional pain is a curse and it's bad and we shouldn't have it. There's no such thing. You can learn more from emotional pain than any lecture or prayer or going to church or whatever can do. Because the moment you see that this is what I need to learn, this is what I need to look at, you see? Because what is a fear? Because all emotional pain is fear, okay? It doesn't matter what you call it, it's all fear. Course in Miracles says there's only love or fear. Love is all that is beautiful and good. It is God itself, and fear is its opposite. Okay, so fear itself is that which we don't understand. It is the unknown part of us. Our greatest fear of humanity, therefore, it is the death of the body. And we hang on to that greatly because we think we actually die. When in truth you cannot die because you're not even born. You appear born. You see, one thing that I realized, and just a few years ago actually, is that my body appears real because of the being that activates it. You see? It is consciousness itself which keeps me looking as if I am alive. Okay? It is that consciousness in me, which is also derived from being or pure awareness. Are you with me? Are there any questions here? Okay. So when we suffer any lack, it doesn't matter what that lack is, because we were meant to be abundant. You know, financially, we are meant to be healthy, we are meant to be happy, we are meant to be fulfilled. If we are not, it doesn't mean we are being bad, it means that we are not listening to what we need to learn. You see, and so as we listen, that very listening itself enriches us and brings us to the fullness that we're meant to be. You know, Jerry said it last time, and I know how accurate it was, but I couldn't find the right words. We were talking about somebody reaches desperation because people are all the time writing, how do I get rid of this? How do I deal with this? How do I overcome this? You see, this is the first thing that comes to mind. Don't overcome anything. Don't try to get rid of anything. Use it as a lesson to teach you greater love, greater compassion, you see, greater beauty that you really are. And Jerry said something, and he said if you are desperate, he said, it was something like this. Do you remember?
I wasn't here.
You weren't here. He says if you are desperate, he says, experience it so fully, so completely, go into it to its very source, to its very core, without trying to get rid of it or feeling like a victim, because the moment you do, it is then that you experience how beautiful you really are.
Yeah.
And it is only then, when we experience our humanity, that we discover being. You see, all the time we want to be happy, but we never find it. We get drunk to be happy, we never find it. We seek sex, in order to seek pleasure and feel happy, but we don't find it. You know, we go to parties, we do many things in order to feel some fulfillment, but it never lasts, you see? And then you might say, but if our nature is the kingdom of God, if our nature is the fullness of God, why don't we experience it? Because we can't experience it until we are willing to experience our humanity first. And it is that which takes us to being. You see, because the only block to being is trying to get rid of the human part of us. You see, trying to control it, trying to make it better. The worst thing you can do is try to make your human part better. Quiet, Mush! I'm talking. I have to say it because otherwise he keeps on going. No, he's quite intelligent, he knows. So, okay, yeah, what do you have to say?
It's because we think there's something wrong that we even avoid our own desperation, because we think that what we're experiencing will really prove our worthlessness.
That's right.
But when we go into it and embrace it, it's like hearing a baby cry and thinking there's something wrong, and then going in and seeing this radiant being and wrapping your arms around it and seeing the beauty and feeling the soul and feeling everything and feeling that, you see, pain isn't bad.
No.
Pain is natural.
Exactly.
And pain is actually beautiful. It awakes life. Mm-hmm. And by being with that, we see not only our own magnificence, but the magnificence of life itself. It's wondrous. Whether you go through ecstasy or agony, they both lead to the same place, which
they
is
both lead to the same place.
Freedom. So, but we avoid that other end, and so it's our denial that gets us caught. That's what hooks us. We go like, not over there, you know, I'm not going there. And in order to be whole and to be holy, we need to see that it is all beautiful and magnificent and be with it. And by being with it, we disappear. And that disappearing to it, we see the wonder and magnificence of it. And it's no longer it doing something to us.
We transform alchemy, transform fruit.
That's what happens. We become the beauty of life itself in its sorrow, in its ecstasy, we become that which is magnificent.
Yes. This is why how Eckhart Tolle happened to become... You've heard of Eckhart Tolle?
Mm-hmm. I have.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And Eckhart Tolle was desperate. He wanted to try to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. And then he came to the point where he said, I can't live with myself anymore. And then he realized what he just said. I can't live with myself anymore. And he went into it so completely. The next day, he was still living from that days, you know, and he went and sat on benches in total ecstasy, just being there. And 10 years later, he wrote the book, The Power of Now, which became a bestseller, and it touched a lot of hearts. So if you go back into some of the greatest people that ever lived, they were all able to transcend what happened and use it. They became more human, and in that humanity, they became great.
It's a gift in that if you have pain or something and you can't escape, which is everybody's nightmare, it's actually a grace, because if you can't escape, then you have to go in.
That's right.
And that's... So from nightmare to freedom.
To freedom, yeah. Yeah.
Even
There's also the thought then, because somebody had asked, and that's why there are 2 emails now which I'd like to explore both. One is about fear, and he says, well, do we have to go to trauma and suffer in order for us to realize who we are? And the second one is about forgiveness, which of course that's what we're doing with those 3 steps that I just mentioned, the alchemy. 3 steps. You remember those 3 steps? Anyway, I've made a copy for you. Okay, those 3 steps are themselves the highest form of forgiveness, because you're not forgiving anything. You see? That's what forgiveness means. It means there's nothing to forgive. Because you are simply giving in to that which you are. You see? Forgiveness, giving it forth. If you think that you're forgiving a person who hurt you, is that forgiveness?
No, that's a sneaky way for your spiritual ego to say, I'm really great and I forgave you. You know?
Yeah,
and,
right.
But in fact, there was nothing ever wrong.
Right.
And that's what needs to be realized. And that person can learn so much from that if they can go into the pain that made them not forgive.
Right. The pain that made them not forgive. Okay, now I have 2 emails, and they're both, one is about fear and the other one is about forgiveness, which of course we discussed. What I'd like to do is anyone here would read one and then the other, and then we'll all explore it. Okay? Now, these are long letters, both of them, so you read it only within the circle, okay, that I made. Would you like to read it?
Sure. You can.
Okay, anyone. We'll start.
Go ahead.
Yeah, recording.
Okay.
Oh, it's so great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Burt. I wanted to ask you a question about forgiveness. I recently watched a couple of your YouTube videos about forgiveness, and in a couple of them you mentioned that there is nothing to forgive. Can you explain what you mean by this? The reason I ask is because I realize that I'm still holding on to anger and resentment towards my mom, and perhaps from that other woman in my life. I am dissolving this to a certain degree, but I really want to know why it is so sticky. It seems that I do not want to let go, but I am unsure why. Why can't I just drop it? Do I believe it's justified? Have I identified the anger as part of who I believe I am? Is it revenge? Can you help me dissolve this illusion that I am under?
Good. Thank you very much. Okay, you read it well. So let's feel that out, please. I'd love to see what you have to say.
It seems to me that he already have answered himself
Yeah.
by doing these questions.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to forgive. Why is it that most people don't want to forgive?
It's
That-
just the ego.
Of course, yeah, but what is it in the ego that makes us not want to forgive? Let's feel it.
I think we want to be right.
We want to be right. And why is it important to be right? Why do we
Be
want
safe.
to
Feel safe.
feel safe? Very good. Control. Okay, and why are they important?
They threaten our very belief of survival.
That's right. Because we still want the being, which is these things. You see? And we also, you see, another thing that happens too, because as a hypnotherapist, I've met most people who have not been validated as a child. Maybe the parents were too busy to give them affection and warmth. Maybe one parent was missing, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so they felt abandoned and they felt invalidated. Now, when you feel invalidated, you know what I mean by invalidated? Mm-hmm. Okay. You don't feel like a human being. You feel there's something wrong with me. People don't love me, you see? And so you carry this, but this is so unconscious. So when somebody hurts you, it reminds you of all that which you have been felt as not an important person. You see what I mean? So all that becomes like an anger. You see? And he says, but if I forgive them, it's just like saying, I surrender to you and you are right. You see? So we think we're giving up by forgiveness. not realizing that forgiveness requires tremendous love of yourself to do so. You see, because forgiveness is a tremendous life-transforming thing, you know. And so this is why we feel justified in our anger. He's angry at his mother because in his heart he feels he has not been validated as her son. He hasn't been loved. He hasn't received enough warmth. Maybe, but you see, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with her. She was just being herself. Maybe she had her own issue. Maybe her own father or mother treated her the same way. Because you see, everything repeats. You know, the parents treat you as they were treated as children themselves. And then we, when we have children, we treat them the same way that our parents treated us. And the cycle continues until we stop and say, enough of this. I want to wake up. So this is what is happening. So we go back to those three: seeking security, safety, and approval. Okay, those are the three that comprise everything. The reason we don't want to forgive is because we want to be right, like you said. Yes. Why is it so important? Because as long as you feel you're right, at least you have a modicum of, I amount to something after all. You see, if I give that up, I feel like I am weak again. I can't love who I am. And it's the opposite, because it takes strength to forgive.
If he could embrace that pain that he's running from, it could actually show him the direction of loving himself and what is inside of him to love, as opposed to being hung on the rack of the outside world as he would see it.
Yeah.
That pain that he wants to drop, or that he has got ideas about, if he could let it break him, it would break him open.
That is beautiful. And he's probably listening to this too. Because he's a beautiful man. He's from I met him, I talked to him, and he's a very beautiful young man. Okay? But the fact that he doesn't want to forgive, and he thinks that somehow the strength isn't there, but the strength is there. He just doesn't want to, he thinks it's a weakness if he forgives. There's a part he feels that is going to be taken away from him, but it's not. But what you said is beautiful. Repeat it again so that he hears it.
If he can embrace his pain, it will break him, and he will see his true beauty that he has sought outside in himself.
Yeah. Very nice, very good. Okay. Isn't it beautiful? Okay. Let's read the other one.
I know you probably get asked this question all the time, but why is it that fear is the first reaction to things or people we don't understand? Why aren't more people accepting? And why must people take other people's lives personally, as if what someone is wearing or what they do or their life choices they make somehow affect them too? Why does it seem like nowadays the only way for a person to truly learn empathy is by living through trauma?
That's what he believes, you see. And many people say that. Do we have to go through trauma in order to... And it's true, some of the greatest people in the world, they were able to overcome obstacles and became great because of that. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln was a truly, truly great man, probably the best president the States ever had? But you know why his greatness? The very people that were against him, the very people that wanted to sabotage him, he hired because he felt that they would be good for the administration. So, I mean, he was a truly great man, a very humble man. But his greatness lives on because of that. See? So, so what is fear then? Let's go to basics. What is the first thing that comes to mind? What is fear?
To me, it seems uncertainty.
Okay.
If you're
Uncertainty.
afraid, all of a sudden you're uncertain of what the outcome is going to be, and so you get frightened because you're not feeling confident of the situation. Or
Okay. See, this is beautiful, when you start talking, because you know that your heart knows all the answers. Yeah, the reason sometimes people don't speak because they're afraid that they might say the wrong thing. See, but if you listen to your heart, and it's beautiful what you said. It's the uncertainty, it's the insecurity, it's the what we don't understand. This is what makes us afraid. You see? So in a way, fear is good for us. If we face it head on, this is what I need to understand. You see? Because it will take us a step further as we face the fear. You see? So, okay, so are there any questions?
In that last reading, there, I got the sense that he was feeling judged because he was putting everything out there. So there must be an insecurity of him with himself in that, because then that's what we throw it out there. So if he could, with all compassion to himself, look at those fear of judgments in himself, and then he can start actually doing something about it. He doesn't have to be a victim of it. He can empower himself by going into his own fears.
And that is what we're talking about here, experiencing your humanity. Experiencing your humanity is not to see something as wrong. You see, the moment we make something wrong, you're finished. And religions told us this is wrong, this is right, this is good, this is bad, you should, you shouldn't. There's no such thing. There's only what is. And it took me years to understand something that simple. There's only what is as it is. Now let me look at it, let me learn from it. If it's not good, I will know it in my own heart. You don't have to tell me. You see what I mean? Like here, I'm not teaching you anything, and I hope you don't think that I'm here, know it all. Okay? I have learned a lot from what I do, and I love this because I learned from it myself. But what I'm trying to stress here is that we all have the truth. It is called our heart. And when we listen to it, it's there. So we take that plunge. That's called meeting your humanity. That's being direct. You see, experiencing your own, So anyway, so those are the two major ones, fear and forgiveness, especially in what we have to cover today. Because when you experience yourself by those three steps, and I made a couple of copies here. Yeah, pass them along. When you do those three steps, you'll find that it is all automatically, forgiveness happens automatically. You see? So those three steps, yeah.
I was just thinking that you were saying you get a lot of questions, and I certainly say it, I always hear people say it, do I have to go through the fear to get to the happiness? Do I have to suffer to get enlightened? Do I have to suffer to get forgiveness? Do I have to go through this? And the thing is, what I've been realizing is there's nothing to go through, and that, similar to what we were saying, but it's like that, what if the fear just was, and what if the happiness just was? And it's like that line from that Joni Mitchell song, laughing and crying, it's the same release. So you go,
beautiful.
Fear,
yes.
Well, maybe it's not fear. Maybe this guy really doesn't have it. Maybe it's just something that you feel.
Yes, it's something that you feel. Why make it wrong and say,
it just is.
It's fear, I should get rid of it.
Yeah.
You see?
It's the same sensation. You think of when you laugh and when you cry, the same thing happens in your body.
Yeah.
So it isn't good or bad, it's just...
Did you know that the subconscious doesn't know the difference between right and wrong, good and bad, real or unreal? It only knows what you believe it to be
Yeah.
and what you make it out to be. You
Please
see?
change your belief.
It is what it is because it is. There is no right or wrong ultimately. You see, there's only God, there's only love. And when we allow what is, and it doesn't matter what it is, we'll find love. And it's always there, always there. If we have to do is see it, look for it. You see? Yeah. And those 3 steps, I don't know how many of you are going to follow them, but I can always keep trying. But if you do, you'll be very happy you did, because you'll find it is so simple. Like I have clients sometimes, they say, when I get up in the morning, I have a bad mood. I said, did you ever stop to ask the question? First put a light around you, take a deep breath. It only takes 1 minute, the whole thing, and then ask, how will this make me feel better? But don't reach an answer, because the mind always wants to give you an answer. How will this make me feel better? The moment you ask it, you start feeling better without, oh my goodness, I'm not feeling bad anymore. Try it. It's that simple. See, truth is very simple. It's just that we don't want to bother. Because we want to feel sorry for ourselves. We want to play victim. We want sympathy so badly. We want approval so badly that we want to cry so somebody will say, there, poor dear. You see? And in the meantime, we're giving away our power. You know. So, but you are so beautiful. Okay, namaste.
Namaste.